it can ignite, and all you gotta do is bring the light. Cause a new light shine, cause a new light shine. Time to get on up.
Shalom, everybody, and welcome again to the Light Lab podcast. My name is Eliana Light. I am so excited to be here with my friends, Cantor Ellen Dreskin.
Hello, everybody.
And Rabbi Josh Wachowski.
Hello again.
And here is our intro question, a preparation question, if you will, which is, how do you prepare for prayer? However you want to take this question, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts because, as you see from our notes, my answer is blank because I don't know what I'm going to say yet. So hopefully y'all can inspire me. Ellen, why don't you go first?
Oh, great. Thanks a lot. I actually did think about this. I did my homework. I love a quotation from Reb Chaim of Tzantz, who said that there was a prayer in order to pray. And he would say, I pray that I may be able to pray. And I know that important things, even before I start to do them, or even before there's an exercise warm up, I'm thinking in my head, how am I even going to prepare to warm up? And getting my mind in the right zone to even begin to think about what I'm about to do. So I got to go there mentally before I can go there spiritually.
Beautiful. I love that quote. Josh, what about you?
I love that idea. And I love the question about preparation for prayer because I think it's a question, one, that's like of the utmost importance to the rabbis, and also one that I think should be of utmost importance to us because, and whenever I talk about prayer or go to any community, I always try to arrive way before, like on a Thursday evening, and help everybody prepare for Shabbat, because everything that we do that we care about in life, we prepare for, right? If we are doing a presentation at work, you prepare for that presentation. If you were on a basketball team, you wouldn't show up at halftime, you'd show up early. I think I may have said this before on the podcast. You'd practice your layups. You'd figure something out. You'd have to figure out a way to prepare. And like our service structure is set up. The Psukei Zimra is the service that's preparatory for the ones that come later. Kabbalat Shabbat prepares us for Shabbat. Yedid Nefesh prepares us for Kabbalat Shabbat. There's preparation before preparation before preparation. And the idea is that this is something that we should be caring about. And I think we should be caring about because it has the ability to change us and change the way that we walk in the world. And so I've been trying to collect a variety of different quotes from different people on prayer. And this one's from Soren Kierkegaard. And it says, "The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays." And so when I'm trying to prepare for prayer, I think about what is it that I need today? How do I need to change the way that I'm walking through the world today to be the best version of myself today, and to pray with real feeling and real emotion and connection?
That's so beautiful. I think one of the reasons I'm having a hard trouble with the question that I posed to the group, so it is my own fault, but it's good. It's a good challenge, is that there's a difference between the spontaneous prayer of my heart. I don't often prepare for that. It erupts, it arises. It's the world meeting me where I am and expressing itself through my song, through my feeling, through my thoughts, through my actions. Then there's when I'm leading prayer. And I do a lot of prep work, if I'm being brought into a community or if I'm leading in my own home community. I think about what is the mood we want to set, what's the vibe we want to set. How can we best help people open their hearts and be present for tefillah, for prayer? What are the melodies that can do that? What do people know? What don't people know? What does the siddur look like? Do I need to write my own? I usually do. So what do people need? And that takes a long time. And then kind of once I'm there and I'm sitting or I'm standing, just looking around the room and taking that little deep breath for myself and starting and being on in that moment. If I'm at the front of the room, it's just kind of like a click, and then I'm on, and then I'm present, and it's the starting that actually gets me there. Even if I'm not feeling up to it, so often the moment I open my mouth, I feel so much better. And I find a lot of joy in holding that space for other people. Yeah, Ellen.
It's just, I've got reminded of starting the ignition to a car and sitting there and really getting ready, and adjusting the mirrors, et cetera, et cetera. And then in terms of leading, and then when you put it into drive and you actually begin the journey, but there's that warming up of the motor beforehand. That's what just popped into my head while you were describing this.
I love that metaphor, especially because I like to start when I'm leading tefillah with a song. Kind of people are talking or milling about, or if they're on Zoom, then they're still saying hi in the chat. But I just start. I start the song, I start the nigun, and people join in, and then we can do the logistics, and then we can talk about what's coming next. But you're right, it is that starting the ignition, and I find it hard when I walk into a synagogue where I am a participant. I have to take a moment to myself to breathe, to sit. I can't just jump in with the words everybody is saying in the Siddur. I need that kind of pre-moment, that preparatory moment, because it's hard to just jump into prayer because prayer is hard. And actually, we are going to just take this head on because for the next, we don't exactly know how many, but many, many episodes, we are going to be doing a deep dive on the tefillah, what the rabbis called ha-tefillah, the Amidah. We are going to do a deep dive on the Amidah, and I'm really, really excited because the Amidah is one of the oldest prayers that we have. It's super duper old. And if you want to get a really cool picture of exactly kind of how old it is and how we know and who's been doing the sleuthing around it, there's a really great essay by Lawrence Hoffman in My People's Prayer Book. You know, that's one of our favorite series on this show. I'm not going to dig into the details, but just know that it's really old. Rabban Gamliel, the head of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish court, was already talking about codifying the Amidah in his time. And in the Talmud, it talks about how the Amidah originated with the men of the Great Assembly, the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. Now, they're a little controversial because some scholars say that they didn't really exist at all, but they kind of serve as a bridge between prophetic times and the rabbis. So for the rabbis of the Talmud to say that something originated with the men of the Great Assembly, it means that it's really old. It means that it was handed down to them. It wasn't even something that the rabbis themselves originated. And plus, we have fragments from the Amidah from the Cairo Geniza. My People's Prayer Book shows this too. While the Amidah is talked about in the Talmud, the first recorded manuscripts of the full out language of the Amidah doesn't show up until the Middle Ages, and we can compare and contrast the themes in the text from the Cairo Geniza, which is the same as the one that we have today, but the wording is a little different with the one that we have. So just know that it's very old and we say it a lot. And Josh, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what the rabbis had to say about the Amidah.
For sure, yes. The Amidah is super old, and it was put together. We have all these different blessings that were added at different points of time, and the rabbis have a lot of conversations in Masechet Brachot, all about the Tractate of Brachot, the Tractate about blessings, all about specifically this prayer. A lot of questions about praying in general, but some of it surround this particular prayer, when we're supposed to say it, how we're supposed to say it, are we allowed to be interrupted while we're saying it? What if we're in danger and there's like a snake going around your ankle? Can you stop saying it, or do you have to keep focused on it? The answer is you can stop saying it and get out of danger. You know, we're just trying to make sure that we're safe when we're praying. And so they have a lot of conversations about what's supposed to be happening and how we're supposed to say it. And in the very beginning, they talk about whether you're supposed to say all of it and the importance of saying all, at that point, 18 blessings. So there's a machloket between the rabbis, a conversation, an argument, where they try to decide how much of it we're supposed to say. So Rabban Gamliel says we're supposed to say all 18 blessings every single day. Rabbi Yehoshua says that you can have an abridged version. You don't have to say 18. You could say less. It doesn't necessarily mention how many is less, but something that isn't the full version is okay. And Rabbi Akiva sort of takes an in-between route. He says if you're fluent, you recite all 18 blessings. And if not, then an abridged version is fine. And one of the commentaries on the Mishnah, Avadim Bar Tanura, says that the halacha, the decision is that we go with what Rabbi Akiva says, which is usually what happens when it's the last one that gets to speak. He gets the final word. The abridged version is 3 first blessings, the ones that talk about our ancestors, the 3 final blessings, and then a prayer called the Vehavinenu prayer, which is sort of a summary of all the middle blessings. And the key for me when I was looking at this is that that blessing is the one that ends with Shomea Tfilah, God who hears our prayer. And I think the idea is that even if we don't feel comfortable with all of the language of the Amidah, if we're able to say this one about God hearing our prayer, then the idea is that God is hearing the intention, hearing what we meant to say. And even if it's not the complete version that's in the Siddur, it's the version that's in our hearts that opens us up to everything we really meant to say in that particular moment.
Amazing. Speaking of the complete version that is in our Siddur, Ellen, why don't you walk us through a little bit of the structure of the Amidah?
Well, it's so, Josh was just talking about the 18 and the 18 blessings in the full Amidah being 18 blessings. There's so many names for this part of the service. We've already mentioned the Amidah. Amidah means standing. This is the part where, as much as we are able, we rise to the occasion, the Amidah. And also you mentioned already Hatfilah in the midst of all our communal public worship. This is the prayer, which is actually a series of prayers. And it's also called the Shmona Esrei. The Shmona Esrei in Hebrew is 18 because it began with 18 blessings. And over the years, one of the blessings was split into two. We don't need to go into too much detail. If you try and count in the Amidah today in your Siddur, you'll probably actually find 19 blessings to be counted, but it's still called the Shmona Esrei. And as Josh mentioned, 3 at the beginning stay the same all the time, and 3 at the end stay the same all the time. And the middle 13 change according to the day or even sometimes the holiday or time of year that it is. During the weekday, those 13 middle blessings are more petitionary in nature, and they are replaced on Shabbat by just one blessing. So on Shabbat, rather than 18 or 19, there are only 7 blessings. And so you may also have heard of, at the very end of the Amidah in the traditional Siddur, there's a page that says Me'ein Sheva. This goes back also to what Josh was saying. What if you come in late and you miss part of the Amidah? Me'ein Sheva means in place of the 7. So in place of the 7 blessings of the Amidah on Shabbat, if you come in late, if you're unable to participate in the whole thing, you can fulfill the mitzvah by praying Me'ein Sheva, the one that is in place of those 7. And as you say, in future weeks, we're going to go into a lot more detail about these various blessings, I know.
Oh, you are so right about that. So much detail. But that's what's great is that we have this expansive time to explore, talk about, look at the different facets of this tefillah that comes up in every service, really, that we have. It's in Shacharit, the morning service. It's in Mincha, the afternoon service. It's in Mariv, the evening service. On Shabbat, we add an extra one for Musaf in the morning. This extra service that more traditional synagogues do that has a callback to the temple service. And then on Yom Kippur, we get another one with Ne'ilah. There are so many Amidot standing times that we have. But before we jump in, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Before we jump in, we have to take a step back. Actually, we have to take 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. And we will talk about that later. But Ching, because the Amidah opens, even before we get into the opening blessing, there is a prefix, there is a pretext, there is a preparation. So Ellen, why don't you tell us all about it?
Sure. It's this beautiful passage, very short, and it serves as a kavanah, an intentional focus statement for Hatfilah, for Amidah. And I'm going to read it in Hebrew first, nice and slow, maybe a couple of times so we can digest it. And then I hope that the 3 of us can have a conversation about what it means and what function it performs. In Hebrew, it says, Adonai S'fatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Adonai S'fatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips and my mouth will tell your praise, or will sing your praises, or tell of your glory in some translations. And it's funny, we were talking before we actually turned on the podcast today about we don't find a lot of creative translations of these lines. I think because each person absorbs them in their own soul. With y'all's permission, I would love to share a poem by a contemporary poet, although he has passed away in the last couple of years, Sid Lieberman, a storyteller and poet from the Chicago area. He has a poem called A Short Amidah. And I like it because he kind of tells it like it is. What does it mean that when I ask God to open my lips and then we're going to enter into conversation? Sid Lieberman says, they say we're supposed to be in a palace. So we bow and take certain steps as the prescribed supplication drops from our lips. But what do we really know of castles and kings? My kitchen faucet constantly leaks, and the kids' faces usually need cleaning. If a door opened up to a real palace, I'd probably forget and carry in a load of groceries. No, the door we stand in front of when the Amidah begins is silence. And when we open it and step through, we arrive in our hearts. Mine's not a fancy place. No jewels, no throne, certainly not fit for a king. But in that small chamber, just for a few moments, God and I can roll up our sleeves, put some schnapps out on the table, sit down together, and finally talk. That's palace enough for me.
Wow. That's palace enough for me. I love that so much. And I was even feeling when you were saying the Hebrew, the expansiveness of the vowels. I've talked on the show before about Victoria Hanna and the work that she does with the different vowels and the letters and just how expansive it sounds. Adonai S'fatai Tiftach. Even that word for openness, tif is kind of inner. Tach, right, is this outer open sound. Ufi yagid, again, inside. Tehilatecha, and then it comes out. So there's this interplay, even in the way that it sounds, between what is inner and what is personal and the challenge of getting it out, which is what the prayer, I think, this kavanah, this intention, is all about. Before I started doing research on Adonai S'fatai Tiftach, I didn't know where it came from. There's so many things in our Siddur. Some of it, a lot of it, is different pieces from text from our Tanakh that the writer of the prayer put in particular orders. So even if it comes from Torah or Tanakh, it almost doesn't matter how you understand Tanakh, whether you think the Torah was written by God directly, whatever that means, divinely inspired, whatever that means. A person decided to put these words there. So we can learn a lot from that choice because this comes from Psalms. Psalm 51, the psalm, as it says at the beginning, written by David after being confronted by Nathan the prophet about his affair with Bathsheba. So this is a powerful man finally needing to take responsibility and come to terms with terrible things that he's done in his life. And it's a really heartbreaking and beautiful psalm. The beginning is mostly David asking for mercy, understandably, asking for mercy from his transgressions, asking for understanding from God. And then we know from our understanding of intertext, as I said, I learned about this really from Rabbi Eli Confer of Hadar, that we've got to look at what comes after the line that is quoted. So right after Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise, David says in verse 18, you do not want me to bring sacrifices. You do not desire burnt offerings. In verse 19, true sacrifice to God is a contrite spirit. God, you will not despise a contrite and crushed heart. It's amazing to think that the Amidah developed alongside the destruction of the temple, when sacrifices were no longer able to be given. And here, to open the Amidah, we have a quote from David, who afterwards says, it's not only that this is in place of sacrifices, this is better than a sacrifice. You don't even want my sacrifice, God. That does not compare to me coming before you with an open heart. There's something so, so powerful about that what we are doing is not a replacement. In what way the rabbis and the whoever it was that first decided to put that line as a kavanah before the Amidah. What message are they telling us about what we're about to do? And also to notice that in this case, it is Adonai, the word Adonai, my Lord. It is not, as so often we see in our tefillot, Yod He Vav He, the unpronounceable name for God that we talk about a lot on this podcast. We often substitute the nickname Adonai, my Lord, for it. But here it actually says Adonai. So what does it mean in this moment where we feel so powerless and we are unsure how to continue to call upon the nickname for God that is the power that is over us? What does that mean? Ellen, I would love to hear your thoughts.
I was only going to say that what I'm reminded of at this moment, hearing you speak, is that in this context, it was through speech that David ended another person's life by sending them to the front lines, or that with his power through his words carried particular weight. And so for him to give that power over to God to be a guide, because things went terribly wrong when he did it on his own, perhaps. I don't know, but that now, God, you open my lips, you guide me from here, because the speech is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, God who is Baruch Omer Ve'oseh, the blessed one who speaks and stuff happens, right? From our Baruch She'amar prayer, which harkens back to the creation of the world. Words are incredibly powerful. And one of the ways that we are made in the image of God is that our words have that power.
Yeah, I think there's something really, really important there about the power of speech, the power of language, and it's really, it seems like a very difficult thing to give over the power of your voice to someone else, right? To God, or in a few words after this, which I'm sure we'll talk about another week, we talk in the voice of our ancestors. We call out in their names instead of our own. It reminds me of, like, to me, it's the first thing I thought of was like the Little Mermaid of Ariel giving away her voice, right? And what does it even look like to give your voice to somebody else? And that voice can be wielded for good or for evil. And so how do we think about the power of our own voices and how we use them? And Eliana mentioned that there are, this was put here in this particular moment, right before the Amidah. We learn that in the Talmud that it was put here by Rav Yochanan, both this beginning one and also bracketed at the very end of the Amidah with the words of the Yehiyu L'Ratzon prayer. These brackets were put in together at the same time. And it's interesting to think about what it looks like that we have this beginning prayer about opening up our lips. And then in the end, we have that closing, Yehiyu L'Ratzon Imrei Fi, may the words of my mouth be acceptable to you. But in that particular paragraph, which is one of my favorite parts of the Amidah, also a later edition, a personal prayer of the rabbis, Elohai Nitzor Lishoni Meira, God, guard my tongue from evil. Protect my tongue. I know that it has been used, like Ellen was saying, my tongue has been used for bad things. So how can I figure out every single day, reminding myself to use it for good? And, when I first started paying attention to that Elohai Nitzor paragraph, the words were very familiar because they also appear in an earlier psalm, Psalm 34, where we say the words Mi ha'ish hechafetz chaim, right? Who is the one who desires life? Ohev yamim lirotov, the one who is looking for years of good fortune. It's the person who nitzor leshoncha meira, right? The person who guards their tongue from evil, usfatecha midaber mirma, and their lips from deceitful speech. And the thing that's most interesting there, in comparison to this paragraph at the end here, is, and the words of Adonai S'fatai Tiftach, is in these words we're asking God to guard our own lips, to guard our lips for us. But in the Psalms we say Netzor L'Shoncha, like guard your own tongue, right? Guard your own tongue from evil, and guard yourself, guard your lips from speaking lies. And so it's who is responsible for the words that are coming out of our mouth. And I think that's something that's important to think about when we're saying these words in these prayers, that these are the words that are coming from us, but we also want to make sure that we're opening our hearts and souls up to something that's happening without and within. And so the rabbis try and figure out, in Hasidic understanding, this blessing is not going out to an outer God, it's turning inward. It says, God who is inside of me, help turn the words of my mouth towards the words that I want to say, right? The God who is within, open up my lips the way that I want to be able to speak. It's a prayer sort of ultimate humility in a way that connects back to those verses from the Psalms that Eliana was discussing earlier. A prayer of humility to open up our hearts and open up our lips.
It's so interesting, Josh, that while we're speaking now, we're using our lips and my lips interchangeably. So it's important to note, I don't know that we've mentioned yet that Adonai S'fatai Tiftach, it's not our God, it's not our lips, it really is first person singular. Both of the prayers that you're speaking about now are intensely personal.
Yeah, absolutely. And in contrast to many of the other prayers that we have in the section that preceded us about that are all in the plural, right? And also, Kabbalat Shabbat, our prayers are all in the plural, but this particular prayer, the Amidah, is an inherently personal and individual prayer, even from the very, very outset.
And with that, we'll be right back.
Shine a new light. Shine, shine. Keep burning bright. Shine, 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 shine. Shine a new light. Shine, 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 shine. Keep burning bright.
Welcome back, everyone. Now that we have explored a little bit of the words, let's explore a little bit of the choreography. Yes, this part of the service does indeed come with choreography that has been handed down to us, just like the words have been handed down to us from our ancestors. So has the choreography. I couldn't find a lot of stuff about when the practice of taking 3 steps back on Adonai S'fatai Tiftach and 3 steps forward on Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha came from. If you, dear listener, know, please let us know. But that is what we have inherited. And Josh, I would love to hear your thoughts or understandings of this practice.
Were you the first person who taught me prayer aerobics? I feel like it was you.
So I learned prayer aerobics from Kathy Berkowitz, educator extraordinaire, now in Boca, but she was my camp education director and my synagogue education director. So yeah, prayer aerobics.
I can picture us, taking 3 steps back and 3 steps forward and bending and bowing and there's energy, there's a movement that happened. We're getting our hearts running and our hearts beating faster too when we get to this moment. And some of that heart beating, comes from just the pressure of what that moment could feel like. The way that I learned about this as a kid was that this is the moment where we're entering the holy chamber, like the poem that Ellen was talking about before. We take 3 steps back, again, out of humility, and to prepare ourselves for the moment where we're going to enter the royal chamber and ask and request and give gratitude and praise. And so we need to make sure that we have a moment to get all the thoughts that are ready in our heads. There was a line in the poem that you said that was, we arrive in our hearts. And so this is the moment where we're sort of intentionalizing that. And then I like the idea that you said also in the poem, it was like, God and I are rolling up our sleeves and getting to work. And that sort of feels to me like when we're taking these 3 steps back, we're rolling our sleeves up, we're getting ready. And as soon as we take that breath, we take our steps forward, we enter the holy chamber, and we proceed.
I needed a second just to breathe that one in. Thank you, Josh, for that. It's funny because I learned a really cheeky explanation for the 3 steps back and the 3 steps forward. It's not a tradition that I grew up with, so I learned about it as an adult. But someone would just said to me, when you stand up and you're in synagogue and you stand up, you find yourself, what's directly in front of you is the row of chairs in front of you, and there's really no room to take 3 steps forward. So you have to take 3 steps back first in order that you can take those 3 steps forward. And it really is kind of cheeky, but Josh, you give, and there is in that its own spirituality of you can't just bust in, take a step. Maybe there's a little moment of, I pray that I might be able to pray before we step back in to a different situation. I'm thinking of Willy Wonka and a world of pure imagination, of stepping into a whole new space than we were just in 3 steps ago. And again, it's a mindset, a spiritual mindset that I love.
And it's the movement that can help us do that. I'm thinking about how it is so easy to do things without thinking about them, right? It is so easy to say all of the words of the whole Siddur and be thinking about lunch, right? We do this as human beings, even practices that arose from a deep spiritual place. If we are not in that place, or we have not given ourselves the space to be in that place, which again, it's not going to happen every time. I'm not saying that it should happen every time. I'm saying that the embodied practice of taking 3 steps back and 3 steps forward is only an embodied practice if we notice that it's going on and we sink into our bodies as it's happening. I have done plenty pre-Amidah shuffles and not had a second thought or feeling about it, right? It's a tool that only works if we pick it up and use it. And sometimes we're going to use it and sometimes we're not. But the tool is always there. And that's what I really like. You know, in our episode with Yoshi, in my interview with him about embodied practice, we talked about these Jewish moments of being able to step outside of time. And I'm really just putting the two together in my mind right now. We kind of take 3 steps back to kind of look at ourselves from the outside, look at time from the outside until we're ready to step back into the flow of time, having taken a moment for ourselves. And I also really love asking this question to kids, because if there's a kid in a Hebrew school, a day school, or who has been to synagogue or knows a little bit about prayer practice, they might know this practice and have never thought about why. Because, like we talk about, we don't have a lot of time to stop and think about why. So asking kids, what do you think this is about, elicits some really great answers. A couple that I think I remember from kids having said over the years is that we take 3 steps back into our community, and then we take 3 steps forward on our own, kind of into the spotlight, which I really love. We are supported and held by our community, but then this is our moment to shine, our moment to talk with God right here, to connect and commune with the Holy One. You know, 3 steps back is a humbling, I am a nothing. And then 3 steps forward is, I am a something, right? I am worthy of being here in the presence of the Holy One. Again, I'll keep saying it on this show. I love that there are so many practices that we have inherited as Jews that we can do together in the same room. And each of us can have our own intention, and each of us can make our own meaning of it, and each of us can be having our own individual experience while still feeling the, as I think Durkheim says, collective effervescence of doing one thing all together. It's incredibly powerful. And with that, we'll be right back.
Oh God, as I stand before you, I ask for strength and for courage as I take time to look at my...
Welcome back, everyone. There are so many different beautiful melodies for Adonai S'fatai Tiftach, which again is interesting, thinking about the fact that it's such a personal prayer for me and my lips and my relationship to the Holy One. And yet in so many synagogues, we sing it out loud. Just something to hold in mind as we look at these different melodies and what aspect of the tefillah they bring out in each of them. So Ellen, we'll start with your pick today.
Well, what I think you just heard a few seconds of is a kavanah to the kavanah of Adonai S'fatai Tiftach. And this melody, one of my favorites, was written by Debbie Friedman. And a lot of people don't know that it exists. So you can find the recording in the program notes, and I hope that you'll do that. But the English with which Debbie prepares us for Adonai S'fatai Tiftach says, "Oh God, as I stand before you, I ask for strength and for courage. As I take time to look at myself, may I open my lips in prayer. And God, as I stand alone, I pray my heart will sing out to you so many thoughts and fears that I have. May I open my lips in prayer." And it's the moment that sets up the moment that sets up the moment. So it really is one of my favorites.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to listen and immerse in that. And I am so glad that you keep our podcast being the Debbie Friedman Stan account that it is. May we continue to bring her legacy forward. And you are such a wealth of knowledge of these melodies that we might not be as familiar with as some other ones. So thank you always for bringing the spirit of Debbie into our midst. Josh, what are your picks today?
Amen, amen, amen to that. Can you hear Ratzon? So may it be. I think the one that I had to choose was the one that I grew up immersed in since childhood, which is Craig Taubman's melody. In thinking about it, when I wanted to share it, I don't know if this was intentional or this was just the way that it fit with the melody nicely. The words that I repeated are the words Ufi Yagid, right? Adonai S'fatai Tiftach, Adonai Ufi Agid Tehilatecha. And what's that like to go back to those words of the lips are calling out? And what is it that the lips are going to call out? Well, hopefully it's Tehilatecha. But at first, we're not really sure. And then we give ourselves a moment to think, what do we want our lips to be reciting? So that's what I'm hearing in Craig Taubman's melody today.
Beautiful. I love looking back on the melodies that we have known for so long and finding new meanings and interpretations in them every single time. Isn't that delightful? I'm actually going to talk a little bit about my own melody for Adonai S'fatai Tiftach because I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. So we'll do like a mini prayer song exploder here. I really like writing thematically. As you might be able to tell, because, I co-founded this podcast, I like going deep into things in particular to bring more meaning out of them. And when I was in college, I thought, wouldn't it be super cool to write a melody for, or a new kind of original song for every blessing in the Amidah? And we're going to call it Please Rise, Volumes 1 and 2. Which would have been nice. I didn't get very far. I think I got like 5 blessings in. So maybe we can talk about some of those other ones as it comes up. But I opened the Siddur and I'm like, oh, drat. Like, I can't even start at the first blessing. There's Adonai S'fatai Tiftach right here. So I started with that. And the song started out kind of as a heartfelt ballad, the way that I was writing it. I imagined it, as we know, I love musical theater. So I kind of imagined it as the time it's like the character on the stage pouring out their heart to the Holy One in this case. Adonai S'fatai Tiftach Ufi Agid Tehilatecha. Right, the Hebrew kind of goes like this in the English. Teach me how to be ready. Show me how to be strong. Plant my feet and make them steady. Give me the words and I'll sing along. So it's the kind of like heartfelt, almost childlike quality where we're kind of asking someone for help, which is something that is good for adults to practice, is asking other people for help. I know I'm not always the best at that. Sometimes I think our prayers help us with that. And then I started working on my album, Songs About God, with my friend Uri Salzberg, who was producing it. And he listened to the song and he said, this is reggaeton. I'm like, what? He's like, this is reggaeton. And all of a sudden, he was playing it really jaunty. Adonai S'fatai Tiftach Ufi Agid Tehilatecha. And the guitar was like, doom chicka doom chicka doom chicka. And we would play it that a couple of times, and I'm like, no. This is not the vibe. It was too jaunty. It seems like too big of an ask, Adonai S'fatai Tiftach. It seemed like a powerful, personal, ballad sort of moment, right? And we know this as songwriters, you two. I've been talking for a while, so I don't know if anybody wants to jump in, but like there are times where we just hear the music is not fitting with the emotional core that we are trying to get across with the words. And it's got to fit. It's got to fit. And so I said, Ori, I understand if you don't want this to be a ballad, but it's got to be something else. How about an angsty rock song? Because that still gives it the power that I want it to have, but it makes it a little more musically interesting. So that's what we ended up with. And also because of the way it fits in the album and what it's saying about my own relationship to the Holy One, to God, I use the language of Havaya, that Yud He Vav He inversion of all that is, even though now I know that it wasn't Yud He Vav He and it actually says Adonai. So what do I know? But you'll hear a couple of seconds of it now and you can hear kind of how it evolved and how different it is from what it used to be.
3 steps back, I am odd and humble, preparing myself to enter through. I am strong, I will not stumble.
Welcome back, everyone. It's almost time for us to say goodbye, but before we go, I'm really honored that today Ellen is going to be leading us in our prayer practice. Take it away.
Thank you. So I invite you to to adjust your posture as you wish, to be in any position that you're in, to be simultaneously relaxed and alert, aware, and to, without trying to alter anything, just be aware of your inhalation and your exhalation. Just what is the breath doing right now? And as you relax into it, I begin with a very short story of a child who is headed home from services with a parent. And the child says to the parent, "Can I ask you something about the rabbi's sermon?" Parent says, "Sure." The kid says, "Didn't the rabbi say that God is inside each of us?" Parent says, "Well, yes, honey, that's true." And the child said, "But didn't the rabbi also say that God is bigger than all of us?" The parent thought for a second and said, "Well, yes, honey, the rabbi did say that God is bigger than all of us." And the child said, "Well, that's what I find confusing. If God is inside each of us and God is bigger than all of us, then isn't God bound to shine through?" For me, this is possibly a perfect metaphor for our breath and for being open to letting God and life in, being aware, being awake, taking a step back to look, and then stepping back in. So as we inhale, Adonai S'fatai Tiftach, just the opening of our lips. As we breathe, open our lips. Help us to inspire, to be filled with the present moment, softening our lips, noting that another word, another English translation of S'fatai is not just my lips, but my limits, my boundaries, my curbsides, the things that contain and hold in other things. Let me soften that. Open my boundaries for this moment, for this conversation, for this breath. May I step fully into this breath. May I let it shine through me. All I have to do is breathe. And let myself be open. Ufi yagid tehilatecha. May what I shine into the world be praise, be blessing. Adonai S'fatai Tiftach. Open lips, open heart, shining through.
Amen. Amen. Ooh, I could sit in that yumminess for a lot longer. Listener, feel free to pause the episode and just stay in that a little more. But for now, it is almost time for us to use our lips to say goodbye. Josh, wondering if you have any parting words of blessing for us today.
I'm feeling filled up from that. I'm going to try and internalize that and internalize the idea of noticing the movement, noticing the intention, not walking through life like a zombie, but giving the moment meaning and walking into that moment.
My prayer for right now, for today, is that I may take as much intention, care, and love to speak to myself in the same way that I desire to speak to the Holy One in this moment. What does it mean for me to approach myself with respect and openness and love in the way that I talk? And how can that influence how I talk to others? May our lips be open. May our hearts be open. Listener, thank you for having your ears open or for reading our transcript or however you are engaging with this podcast and the show. We thank you so very much for being here. We are so excited to go on this Amidah journey with you. Expect more interviews, not about the Amidah, but about other things, more interviews, more music. And I want to take some time, because we haven't done this in a while, to use my lips to thank Christy, our incredible editor from Allobee, and Yafa Englander, our amazing podcast developer extraordinaire. If you haven't been seeing her social media work, please take a look on our socials at thelight.lab. She's doing an amazing job. She also puts together the incredibly extensive show notes that we have every week. If you're not reading those and you're like, what was that book that Ellen talked about? What was that text that Josh quoted? It's all in there. And may this help us open our lips and open our hearts in prayer. We'll see you soon, everyone. Bye.